Hey, I'm Wally Adamchik, president of Firestarter Speaking and Consulting, and welcome to your next installment of Construction Leadership from A to Z. Today, communicate. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw. Communicate, to impart knowledge of, to make known, to give or interchange thoughts, feelings, information, or the like by writing, speaking, etc. The opposite would be conceal or withhold. Leaders get people to do things. These things may be of the leader's choosing, or they may be a shared objective, but the leader is the one who gets it all started. The leader is the one who helps people understand their role and their contribution. The leader tells the story and explains the why. Author and professor Nitin Noria says communication is the real work of leadership, while presidential speechwriter James Humes contends that the art of communication is the language of leadership. Many people think themselves much better communicators than they really are. My wife often reminds me of this failing in me. In the past week or so, have there been any instances where you found yourself thinking or saying, "That's not what I meant"? Now, it doesn't matter whose fault it was. What matters is that communication broke down. It was not effective. Notice we have not used the words speaking and telling. Communication is not about your monologue. It's about the impact of the message interpreted by the receiver, matching the message intent of the sender. Effective communication means that what is heard is actually what was meant to be heard. When I say stop, you hear stop, not slow down or full speed ahead. Intent and impact match. Communication is most effective when it flows evenly between people. Thus, listening is equally as important as speaking. The only way the leader can know what is going on in the ranks is to talk with people and be genuinely interested in what they tell him. This dialogue goes a long way to establish credibility for the leader. Listening sends the message, I am interested in you and what you have to say. You matter to me and this organization. Many definitions of leadership include the word influence. Generally, there are two ways in which a leader can influence others to do something. The first is by setting the example or modeling the desired behavior. And we'll talk about that in chapter M. The second is by communicating personally and organizationally to others to help them understand the vision, the objectives, and the plan. This helps people understand their role in accomplishing the objectives, why they are important, and the impact they can have. Perhaps more important, effective communication also contains an element of motivation. Having clearly explained a group or individual's role in helping to achieve the goal, the right kind of communication can galvanize them into action. The problem is that communicating is a skill we take for granted. Actually, we tend to ignore it. Consider where you first learned to communicate. It was at home. And this environment may not have been the most conducive to learning clear, effective means of transmitting ideas. Then we went off to school, where we were exposed to masses of people who were different than us, and we may have picked up some bad communication habits. For those of you who have sent children to preschool or kindergarten, you know what I mean. The vocabulary they come home with is sometimes not the one you sent them with. When we finish school, we enter the workforce, replete with more opportunities for negative examples of communication. So, it is by default, rather than by intention, that we develop styles of communication that may include sarcasm, vagueness, indirectness, or other means of masking our true intent. We each have a style of communicating. The DISC model of Dr. Ralph Marston is one of the easiest to apply and understand. It states that there are 4 basic types. I make the comparison to radio frequencies when I'm talking about communication. If I am an FM transmitter and you are an AM receiver, what do we have? All we have between us is static. Now, if I'm an FM transmitter on 105 and you're an FM receiver on 95, we still have static, but we also have a chance. If I adjust my setting to 95, I can now communicate with you on your wavelength. There is no other way to get on the same frequency. I must adapt, and later, maybe the other person will too. But I can fairly guarantee that if you never go here, they're never going there. So we must strive to be adaptable in our own style of communication, which means you must work on self-awareness. Oh, and that we'll talk about in Chapter S. The most fundamental part of being human, the ability to communicate, is rarely taught to us. Many of you have taken speaking or presentation skills classes. Have you taken a listening skills class? Yet, as we have seen, effective communication is essential to the ultimate success of a leader. There are many things you can do to become a better communicator. Understand your DISC profile. The DISC assessment is an excellent tool for this. Second, study the subject. There are many books out there on how to improve your communication skills. Pick up 1 or 2. Third, apply, analyze, and refine what you learn to become more effective. Before we close this section, I must touch on technology. Several years ago, Richard Moran wrote a simple business book full of wisdom. Never confuse a memo with reality. To his insights, I would add, never confuse an email or text message with effective communication. It may get the point across, but it may not. And in today's business climate, that's not a chance you can afford to take. Certainly, as new generations come into the workforce, technology will continue to evolve. But what we know for sure is that communication happens best when it's face to face. An over-reliance on the technology spells doom for most any leader. Clear, open, effective communication is the bedrock of successful leadership. And at its core, leadership is about relationships. Effective leaders have more effective and positive relationships. And like all relationships, good ongoing communication is essential. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak, said Roman philosopher Epictetus. All right, we've talked a little bit about communication. How do we jumpstart yours? Read The Lost Art of Effective Listening. And if you don't want to read the book, send me an email and I'll send you a fairly lengthy PDF book summary, actually 2 of them. Outstanding book. Learn your DISC style. Heck, we can set up one for you at almost no cost. Turn the cell phone off. There's an airplane mode. Leave it in the car. Go face to face. I was at lunch a couple of weeks ago with a client and he says, well, you surprised me. And I'm like, well, how so? And he says, you haven't even checked your cell phone. And then I realized you didn't even bring it in. I don't want to have the temptation. Respond, don't react. There's a difference. And the way you do that is breathe when someone is done talking to allow that to happen. Read Crucial Conversations twice. Sit, don't stand. It sends the message, I have time for you. Let's take a look at communication in action. The personality profile of the construction industry is a task-oriented mix of a drive for results with attention to detail. The people side of the equation is often missed and sometimes abused. Recognizing the importance of effective communication, Kinsley Construction lists essentials of communication as a prerequisite for all subsequent courses at their Kinsley University. All employees in supervisory roles attend a half-day session on communication. The highlight of this session is the DISC profile. Now, no single program will eliminate conflict, but this effort has increased the quality of communication by increasing awareness and giving attendees information they can use on the job to communicate more effectively. Longtime Kinsley employee John Kottich has become one of the biggest supporters of the program. Here's what he says. Wally, this is a great tool for zeroing in on how different folks operate, think, and how they respond in a business atmosphere. It teaches people to realize that we all have differences. This assessment helps all of us to realize that we can all connect and work as a team. It can be staggering. A guy can be quite surprised to see the scores that confirm he is on the wrong track. They're pretending to be something else when their score says they should be something totally different. John says in his case, it was about easing up on dominance. And that was a major step for him, and it made him a better manager. Overall, this is one of the best exercises that they could do to draw folks together and teach them that everybody has something to offer. You just need to be able to draw that out of the individual, and this focuses on communication that does that. We have a conversation about how we're going to have the conversation, and that's made all the difference. All right, well, you've heard some content. You got a couple of tips on applying and jump-starting communication in your life, and we heard what it looks like at Kinsley Construction. How about some A to Z application? Are you a good listener? And how do you know? This is a good time to get out your journal and jot some things down. List someone you know who exemplifies this trait. What do they do specifically? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate on this trait called communication? What specific things can you do to improve in this area? And let's set some SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. Classic SMART goals. And finally, what one thing will you do differently as a result of having attended and participated in this section on communication?